It works? Okay, so now we will have two talks related to web development. The first one with Janko showing us Aida, and after with Chris on Parasol. I like the name. Huh? It's good for the sun to come and.
Bonjour à tous. Hello everyone. I hope that you will find something new in my talk about MVC, that is Model View Controller, as you know, Model View Controller pattern. And my motivation for this talk is that we have, as you know, 30 years of Smalltalk, actually Smalltalk 80. And we have near 30 years of MVC pattern also. To be more exact, it is 34 years old. So we are not very exact, but since 1972, but 779. But actual start of using MVC started with Smalltalk 80, and that's why probably we are near 30 years. So next, this MVC is very hot just now in JavaScript MVC frameworks. We'll talk a little bit about this, and because of that, I think we should, as Smalltalkers, we should revive MVC and try to use it in some new ways. Why JavaScript guys are using MVC? Because we are now in an era of so-called single page and also real-time web applications. There's no Gmail and everything on the web is also now single page. So you do not refresh the web page anymore. So that's why single page. Everything is happening in one page. And real time that everything is changing now in real time when something is changed. You don't need to refresh the page anymore. So that is my motivation. So let me start. I will try to explain MVC in a few words. We will go to history, of course, briefly. We will go to see what is usage in current JavaScript frameworks, and then in Smalltalk. And we will use Aida web framework for examples, and also I will talk about the future plans, what will we try to do in by MVC in Aida. Okay, MVC is architectural design pattern. So we have model, view, and controller. Model is for domain-specific data and logic. Be careful in Smalltalk model. Domain modeling is a bit different than in other languages, because in Smalltalk we have live, long-living objects usually, especially if you use image as a persistent, or if you use object database like Gemstone. So you have live, long-living objects. While in others, you usually have some kind of database and the objects are live there. And those databases are usually not object-oriented. They are relational or no SQL at this time, but still things are a bit different, and that's why usually model in Smalltalk is separated from the framework, MVC framework, while the JavaScript frameworks usually have model inside their framework. So a bit difference. Okay, model is that. View is for presentation, of course, to the user, and controller for interactions with the user, and then updating the domain model. This picture here is a bit different than you usually see the pictures of the MVC, because you have those events, updates, changes, actions, and view observing model. Also, separation of concerns is the main motivation here. So you separate domain model with business logic to say, so state and behavior of the application from the user interface aspects. This is the biggest motivation, and also MVC was used and still is using especially for that. Okay, MVC, as we said, is based on the observer pattern. So observer, we have observer who observing observee or observable. But observee does not know for the observer to, so you don't have a backlink to say back to the observer. This is the main part of the observer pattern. Another one is that we have a dependency mechanism. So changes of the observee are published back to the all observers. So that way observer needs to know how to synchronize its view with observee when observee changes, without deeply coupling, tight coupling them together. So for this we are using separate publish subscribe event bus, kind of, and this is also very, for instance in Smalltalk we have announcements framework, you probably know for that. So while others have other frameworks for publish subscribe event bus. What happens when you have multiple observers of the same observee, the same domain object? This publish subscribe bus starts to be interesting at this situation. So you can have many observees, which means many views of the same model. For instance, you have, for instance, a person can have a detailed view and have a history of view, salary or something, whatever. So many views. You can have many applications and many platforms like web or mobile or desktop and so on. And you have also many users, of course. Or mix of everything. In any case, you need to update the views for all of those who observe the observee. Okay. Let me do one example. Let me show an example. Actually, you will see this example by yourself if you open this demo.aida.web.si on your browser, because many of you have open. You can see this demo in real time and live. So demo.aida.web.si. And if you click real time on the left, you will see this picture. Something like this. This is actually this chart. So real time here, if you click. Yeah. Okay, fine. Oh, it's okay. No, not. Okay.
There's timeouts.
Timeouts, huh?
Yeah.
Sorry for that. Okay. You saw a little bit. So you have counter demo, usual counter. You decrease and increase buttons and count. So you actually can just look at the code and see how this is done in Aida with MVC style. So in MVC we have a model and we have view and controller. Model here is actually this demo object, which has here counter instance variable, and we have then of course here visual stuff. So this is model part, which is a live object actually, and it is stored in the image in this time. So we have pure object model for our application. And then we have demo app it's called app application. Actually, this is a collection of views, and also the controller part is here. And if you go to see here, we have also the observee connection back to our observee, which is web demo as we see before. So That's why we have this observer pattern done. So my instance of web demo application, and we have instance for every session with you. So every user has his own instance, and then we have views. Okay, for a real-time application, a real-time example, we have this one here. This is actually what it is. So enable real-time means that we are doing a real-time connection, actually channel from the client to the server, which is WebSocket enabled. This will enable us that other changes from the others will be reflected to our site. Okay, we have this usual stuff. Here is our counter element, which is actually just the number. This is actually a counter number in the separate method, and then we have buttons on click handler. So we have a decrement counter here when we click stuff, and that's it. What is important is this one here. And this thing is a manual, say, dependency mechanism. So we are manually do change handler here. When the increment counter will happen, this will happen also. So counter element will update. Counter element is here. And if we go to the counter element, it's simple. Okay, some element, some styling, and here is important. We have here this connection to our observee, so our main object. Self-observee and counter, and of course you can click. Okay. So this is Aida style of working here. Let me go back to the. Let's go to the history. So MVC pattern was invented by Trygve Renskau. Did I spell correctly? Trygve Renskau. When he worked at with Alan K. Groups in 1978 and 79. So at the end of the 70s, on Xerox PARC, he worked on Smalltalk and also Dynabook aspects. And this picture here is his reflection from 2006, actually, back to the MVC pattern. So he then developed a little bit further things, and he came to the main point that user's mental model is transformed to the computer model through the MVC. So controller view part is responsible for this transformation of user's mental models to the computer models. And he did a little bit further about this. Goran, do you know a little bit more about this?
Yeah. One thing that I find interesting, if you read what Trygve has written about MVC, is that the controller, the part of the controller is to control many views. And then you've heard later on completely different ideas about what the controller does or doesn't do. Now, Trygve is 83 years old today, and we're still debating on what MVC is. I find it quite interesting.
Thanks. Yes, this controller part of MVC is actually, just to say, problematic. Even when he started to design MVC, he changed what the controller is many times, and it was then also defined differently in VisualWorks or Smalltalk 80s at the start. So also that's why you will see that MVC is not called MVC, but with different names like MV Presenter, MVP in Dolphin Smalltalk, Microsoft is also used, or MVVP on MV whatever actually. So you have also MV star or MV whatever the name for this. So this is a picture from 1988 from PyQuest, from Glenn Krasner and Stephen Pope. And you see the progress in actually 10 years, how in Smalltalk world, actually in VisualWorks, things were different. Okay, we have this user input here. Controller is for user input and device interaction, and he trigger view refresh to say here, and you have here of course view, which is display output with on different user interfaces. And here is a model, which is the application, domain, state, and behavior, as you see. So at that time, they have still strict separation here, and model was not part of the framework itself. And then you have dependency mechanism, so-called dependency mechanism at the time. So change of the model part is depends on they have, those are dependents, and you have change messages all the time. So this part is now called differently, as you see, and you will see again a bit later. Okay, history of MVC by Descartes. So in 80s, okay, 90s, near 80, yeah, MVC was invented. Smalltalk 80 and VisualWorks by Park Place at the time, and now Synchron, as you know, were main users, as far as I know. So if someone knows better history of MVC, I would like that you tell something about this now, because I did as you see, a very brief history here of main things, main happenings, not everything. So also in Smalltalk, history of Smalltalk MVC, if someone knows better, raise your hand, please. Okay, in 19th we have interesting happenings with next step, an open step, and Cocoa, current Cocoa in April is actually quite influenced by MVC. So this is stated in literature. I don't know the details because I'm not user of Cocoa. This is one of the main parts. Another part is web stuff, which was actually in year 2000 and later very interesting. But in 1996, Aida Web was born, and Aida Web is MVC framework, but also Visual Wave from the time Park Place was also born near the same stuff. I forgot to mention Visual Wave. Apologize for this. So those two Smalltalk web frameworks were actually the first, I think, on the web. I'm not. I don't know if there were some other attempts at the time, 1996, on the web to do such stuff by MVC. Okay, Squeak has a MVC GUI framework. I think also in 90s, or it was this in year 2000 or later. Someone knows? No? So okay, in the year 2000 later, web applications raised very, very fast. And you have JavaScript pages which are influenced by actually one parts of JavaScript, or actually spin-offs of the JavaScript pages are part MVC based. Then you have Java stuff like Apache Struts, Spring, so GUI stuff. And you have Microsoft ASP.NET, and of course you have Ruby on Rails. Ruby on Rails has most outspoken MVC framework actually. So all web-based, but those are usually classical web applications which has a page which is refreshed. So when you refresh, you get a new synchronized view of your objects, domain objects. But in 2010, so nowadays, we have a big outspring of JavaScript MVC frameworks like Backbone, Ember, Angular, and so on. Why? Because as I said, single-page web applications are now interested. So you have one page, and you have also a back channel back to the client, so you can update your views in real time. So that's why this dependency mechanism is very important to have. Okay, in JavaScript, the Backbone was actually first one. Then we have like Knockout or Ember and Angular and so on. Those are probably the most important JavaScript frameworks right now. Ember is especially interesting because our Ember Smalltalk guys, as you see, the name is quite similar to the Ember Smalltalk, yeah? And actually it was Ember.js firstly, but guys were very kind to listen to the Nicolas Peton complaint, so they changed the name to the Ember, which is pronounced probably Ember or Imber or how, I don't know. So, native English speakers, how is Ember, this Ember pronounced? Ember. Still Ember, okay. So we have Ember and Ember, Ember Smalltalk and Ember.js, okay. Okay, let me say something about Angular.js. Why this is important? Maybe not so much because of his technical barriers, but because it's supported by Google and influenced new HTML standards because they are working very hard together with Chrome group and also with Dart group, Dart language, you know, and many ex-Smalltalkers are there. So we have actually connection in Google because of that. So we can learn something. And for instance, Alan Knight, if you know, go to the Google Dart team recently, and he actually helped me at this presentation a little bit. And he said that this web component standard, VW, web component standard, is quite important and something to watch. And as you see, as you know, Smalltalk web frameworks all are using components already now. So web guys are catching us now after how many years? So, but we need to be, careful and fast to be better even in this. I think there is a big opportunity here. Okay, to do MVC is something which is not framework, but is a kind of MVC playground where you have all those frameworks, applications on all those frameworks, the same application with this very simple to-do list. So to compare things together. You have here this Google for it, and you will see. And I propose that Smalltalkers also go there and put our frameworks there. So we need to do this to example. Okay, MVC in Smalltalk in nowadays and in use. So also raise your hand if someone doesn't agree completely. But as I know, by my knowledge, we have actually two GUI frameworks in VisualWorks and in Dolphin Smalltalk, which is as MV presenter, MVP, kind of MVC. And we have web frameworks which I don't know, but Aida is the only one which is which strictly using MVC now. But of course, MVC you are using with other frameworks too, because this is a pattern, and some frameworks are using implicitly, others you need to do explicitly. Okay, future MVC in Aida Web. So, as I said before, we didn't have this this stuff in web framework. So backlink. So when domain object changed from some outside stuff, we didn't update our views. So Ruby on Rails and all those all other frameworks from 2000 didn't have this backlink. So this is something which JavaScript MVC frameworks are solving, more or less good. And this is what we are doing now to implement it now in Aida also, by some separate value holder, where this value will be, we will have a replica of value of the main object here. Value, I mean some instance variable, for instance. And of course, when the domain object will change, this one will be notified by pub sub bus, and all views will update through those real-time channels, as mentioned before. Kind of this seems very simple, but it's not so simple to do, especially because those real-time channels are not. It's hard to maintain them connected all the time, and also it's very hard on the web to see when some view is actually active, when not, and such things. So this way we will have still decoupled stuff, so no direct connections back to the model, to the GUI stuff, and also no need for extra code. So if I try to show this on here, on my example, I will so first thing I will remove this part. So this is manual dependency mechanism system. So maybe manual publish subscribe stuff. I will remove this stuff first, and I will change this thing here to be more direct. And if you go, I won't. We don't have time yet. Here is the final stuff. So it is much simpler. This part here is simpler. So I added some web element which is text of the director myself of the counter, and I don't have those manual dependency mechanism. While this part still is here. Change mechanism. What is problem here is that I still need this ugly stuff here. So when I change the counter, I need to this announced change. So I need to manually do change announcement, add the method here. And this is not nice, of course, because I need to change my domain models only for that, to flag changes. So here is my the last, more or less last slide. Change detection. So I would like to urge Faro, Squeak, and others to do this on VM level, if possible, because this will help us also web, not only web developers but anyone, much easier. So ideas here is, of course, to get rid of this part, to add any other method to the mutator methods. So automatic change detection is needed. One possible solution is, as in VisualWorks already, so to use so-called immutability flag there. So immutability flag is actually used of last remaining bit in object header. And when this flag is set, object is put in the read-only mode. So there is a trick here. So we put in read-only mode, and when you try to change the object, you get an exception. In an exception, you just change the stuff. So you put it be immutable back, so write, then change the stuff back to read only, and then in exception header you announce change. So this way actually is possible to detect changes without any change in the code. So this is something which will be very nice that all Smalltalks will have, because I think at least in Speak Power VM we have still this bit remaining unused, and we can use it. And also other Smalltalks, I don't know exactly, some other Smalltalk VA is using, VA has change detection this way already. So VisualWorks and VA have immutability, kind of, okay? Okay, to conclude, so MVC is, as you see, very alive after 30 years. It is very useful for, as I said, nowadays single page and real-time web applications. And Smalltalk community, let me repeat again, is encouraged to find new ways of using MVC in our applications. Thank you very much for your attention.
But it still the extra work. I mean, you need to change something in your code to make it work, even using mutability.
Yes, you need to do this thing here. Be immutable at that way. So you need to announce in the.
Yeah, I mean, you still need to change your code somewhere to work in this fashion.
Yeah, but this part can be, and it is in VisualWorks actually, it's separate and it's general. So you don't need to do this for any every object, domain object or instance, but it's a general solution here. So what you need here is announce in the advance that this object will be immutable, so the exception will erase, as far as I understand. Yeah.
You find this is fully performant, making the objects immutable and using this trick, you're perfectly happy with the performance you get.
At least in VisualWorks, this is a trick, of course, still, but
But is it a nice performance trick?
you need to do this by when you change the domain object, which is usually rare, much rarer than viewing the domain object. So performance is not such a big problem.
Hello? Okay. I'm not sure if this is a really good idea. So when I work with MVC, I always have the problem that I want to change some variable and don't want to have it propagated all the time. So maybe for setup or reset or something else, you want to have something to change it, which you don't have to propagate. So when you have this kind of solution, you have a really hard time setting something up to not propagate. So you make it easy to propagate now, but you make it really hard to not propagate. I'm not really sure if this is good. I found it always good to be very explicit in what you want to propagate.
So So you would like to extend this exception, even first handler, to be more, what to say, exact when to say to propagate change and when not. But you are still using this exception handler, and actually this is what is VisualWorks have because there is some. I don't remember.
Not used like that.
It's not used.
No, the mechanism is there, but it's not used for event propagation, for announcements and stuff. And it's a good idea not to use it like this.
Yes, idea here is that framework install this. So this immutable is called by, say, by framework. So when you put the observee connection between view and model, you actually do this. So when this framework is active, then he is using this, otherwise not. This is planned so far. But as I said, this is planned so far. We will see. There is no experience yet in Aida.
I have a question or a remark. Is there anybody programming in Dolphin? No? Ah, that's a pity. Because I would really like the MVP pattern of Dolphin is really interesting. So this means that for me, when we say that MVC and MVP are the same, I said, it's. I remember in '98 when they were presenting Dolphin at Southampton. It was really interesting because for me, I still do not really understand really well what is the presenter versus the view. And from that perspective, the view was something that you see on the object, and the presenter was really the widget part. And that was very interesting. I really think that we should have a look at what they were doing. We were looking at also a lot of the article on MVC, and sometimes you have 8, 9 different roles and things like that. So at some point they get completely crazy. And I have the impression that the Dolphin people, they really got something there. So, okay, I would have liked to have a demo.
Actually, those articles about MVP on Dolphin are still on the internet, so the articles and also this presentation is still available. So let's go there and look at it. MVP is problem is just this, yes, V and P, so view and presenter. But why two different stuff? Those are hard to understand. Okay, another one. Question?
Do you think that method wrappers could be used to achieve this kind of stuff? And will it be more decoupled using method wrappers, for example?
Method wrappers?
Yes.
For instance, about history about this change detection in Gemstone, builder for VisualWorks. This is a part which is works on VisualWorks and connects to the Gemstone database. They had the same problem a while ago, how to solve this problem. And they did, for instance, they compile background and add this change method in background. For instance, this was one solution. Another tried to do wrappers. Yes, I don't know exactly how they did, but all this you need to do some other. So if you need to compile or something, and then if you compile these things with debugging problems with debugging arrays and everything. So at the end, when this solution was done by VisualWorks, the problem was there is no problems anymore. Not so big problems as before. So I think this is the only way to go, kind of this way. Okay. Yeah.
So, Janko, just a comment. It seems to me that I have concerns about how much performance there would be when you're throwing exceptions. I take your point about not changing values that often. But one thing I want to point out about this method is that when you change something to be immutable, you're changing a single object. If you use method wrappers, you're changing every object of that class at the same time. So in theory, if I have 5 objects and I only want to get notified about changes to 2 of them using your solution, I can do that. And the code still works. If I only make 2 of them immutable, those 2 broadcast their changes, but the other 3 don't. So that's something you get here that you don't get using some of these other alternatives.
I'm not sure that method wrappers will be long-term solution anyway, because people tried this before. We need to ask Gemstone guys what all they tried to solve this problem. But also method wrapper can be probably done to catch on the object level, the change on the object level. I think so. Okay, yeah.
Sometimes